Hey, welcome in everybody. This is episode 3 of Dogs on Skates. I'm J-Dawg, that's Andy, and we got an exciting show ahead, and I am so happy right now.
Let's
I am a
go.
proud, excited Canadian. Could not, man, I don't know how happy or when the last time it was that I've been this happy following a Team Canada performance. I am on top of the moon right now.
I mean, it's
So
been a while
happy.
since we had a real Team Canada
No
performance.
kidding. No kidding. Mr. Gary Bettman, a lot of people are saying thanks to you right now. I don't know if it's thanks or gosh darn time, but my goodness, that was amazing.
Right?
That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Fantastic game. Fantastic outcome. So proud of the team. Um, yeah. Just
Straight up, like one of the best hockey games I've seen in such a long time. That was the world's best, like playing their hearts out and knowing the meaning and importance of that game.
and just
Um,
amplified by the tournament game, right? Taking that
100%.
loss a couple days earlier and then coming back and taking it from them. And when it
100%.
mattered, right? Like sure, you guys won that last game, but what that get you? An opportunity to lose in the championship.
Totally. And I think that's exemplified by guys like the Kachucks. As much as, so many Canadians hate them, I think what they did helped bring the rivalry. Like, you can't have the game we just had if they're nice and friendly Canadians. They're cocky, they're calling their shots, they're coming to rub it in our face. And I think that added to the importance of that game. And obviously, there was a lot of other underlying meanings, but I think that added a ton to the importance of that game because we knew if we were going to lose that game, we were not going to hear the end of it from so many of those bloody Americans.
No, no, it would have been a very, very long time before we lived that down. And you need, in any good story, in any narrative, you need a protagonist and you need an antagonist. You need a villain, right? In order to triumph, you need something to triumph over. And like you say, if it was just a friendly, you know, exhibition
Exhibition
game
game.
between two
Yeah.
countries, it's would mean absolutely nothing. It'd be like, that was all right. We saw a lot of good hockey players, but that's pretty much just an all-star game at that point. But
100%. Totally.
with the emotion, it just elevates it to something entirely different.
And with the game that happened on Saturday, that got everyone so extra excited for this game because we saw what a game with not really a lot of stakes like brought out of these players. And now you put like an actual trophy in front of them and gold medals and prize money and just national pride. I was very excited, and so were lots of people.
A
Bucci
lot
Gross
of people.
on X um, posted that 9.3 million viewers for Canada USA final on ESPN alone last night. I think it was like four something for the Saturday game, and that was like that broke the record. So like that was enormous viewership. It was about 10 million, I believe, for the Saturday game total between Canada and US. This one was about 16 million. It had so many eyes on it, and they super duper did not disappoint. That was a game where it had so many storylines, but it had like the underlying excitement of guys like Sidney Crosby. Could they do it again? Like when it's 2-2 going to overtime, everyone's like, the Americans can taste revenge and the Canadians can taste like the glory they had in 2010 all over again. I never thought I would experience that kind of feel again. And I had the opportunity a couple days ago to experience that. And that was such a cool feeling.
So I just had to Google it, and the New York Times has an article talking about the viewership and the 9.3 million on ESPN. But get this, in Canada, Sportsnet said the game averaged 5.7 million viewers and peaked at 7.3
Whew.
for the overtime when McDavid scored. Now, Canada's population is like 40 million. We had 7.3 million people watching that game.
Wow. Wow. An
16
exhibition
million
game in the
viewers
middle
in
of the
North
season.
America. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you this much, All-Star Game doesn't do that.
Yeah, no. No, I don't know how you can bring that back. I don't think you can.
So, talking about bringing it back, though, what is your level of concern that I'm sure Gary Bettman loves this?
mhm.
You know, even though he was kind of the reason that it hasn't happened until now, I'm sure he loves how many eyes were on the
Oh,
NHL.
definitely. 100%.
But how do you think the Players Association feels? We had a number of guys getting injured in this thing, partly because of that increased intensity. And that's my biggest fear. I saw somebody compare it to the NFL Pro Bowl, which I guess at some point was a little bit different than it is
Sure.
today.
Yeah.
But the injury risk led to it being tamed down.
And they
Which
actually got
turns
rid of
into
the
All-Star Game.
they actually got rid of the Pro Bowl altogether. It's now a flag football game.
Is it really?
It is now flag football game.
Can you imagine touch hockey? Down. Puck's mine
Oh
now.
man.
Please no. Please no.
I think it's of two minds. Yes, one side for sure, the injury concern is a big thing, but you just grew the game like insurmountable amount. I'm not sure how you say that
bigly.
properly. Bigly.
Grew it bigly.
Largely. I think that the impact you have on growing the sport with those couple of games, Canada, USA, and even just the tournament in general, is so big for the game. Everyone, because it had the Saturday game with the 3 fights in 9 seconds was happening, I believe, simultaneously with the NBA All-Star Weekend. It was such a disgrace. They had guys like Draymond Green broadcasting on the broadcast for that event, talking about how terrible it was. They had Kevin Hart on the mic in arena so the guys could hear him, and he was like kind of like joke narrating the event, and I think that was for the All-Star game, and guys were like, he was making fun of like their shoes and stuff like that. Like it was terrible. It was so bad. People were leaving it and going and flipping over just to like, what's hockey doing? And they turned on and saw fights and like guys just playing their hearts out and like bone crushing hits. Like that game had so many hits on Saturday. So yeah, that was it has got America talking about hockey and how the NBA needs to go and watch some hockey. It has NBA players and I think even baseball players talking about so if you want to go watch, like, I think it was Kevin Durant was like, if you want to go watch like big hits and like a rough tough game, just go watch hockey. And everyone's like, okay. Like, yes, I do. I'm not sure what point you're trying to make with that, but yeah, people are unhappy with basketball, and hockey took the spotlight this past week and a half, 2 weeks, and it is so cool to see because we have been riding coattails to the other big sports for a long time.
Well done, Gary Bettman, for once. Finally, it sounds like
he fell into it ass backwards. He got so lucky.
Almost. Right. Like I feel like a house is gonna fall on me, something like I'm in. Yeah. Very strange. Very strange to be grateful for something Gary Bettman's done. But I will reserve my true praise until I actually see NHL players at the Olympics, until I see a tournament like this come back.
Mm-hmm.
It is a shame that you can't have more countries involved, but I get it. This is an NHL tournament. You don't really have enough NHL players from Germany to ice a German team for Draisaitl.
The World Cup in 3 years, it's going to have 8 teams. It has to have Germany. You've got Draisaitl, you've got Stützle, you've got a lot of good players on that German team now. Germany has to be there.
But that's not a NHL event, right? This was an NHL event, only NHL players.
The World Cup will be an NHL event.
Well, how do you fill out a Team Germany?
The players won't all be from the NHL, but it'll be an
Right.
NHL run event.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So that's what I would prefer to see is fill out these teams, or failing that, the other option that I see would be to do a, you know, 4 nations versus the world or something, and then you can take an amalgamation of other countries. I think in that
Totally.
case, the world team probably stomps on the 4 nations, but you never know. There's ways to do it. Is, I guess, the takeaway here. This doesn't have to be a one and done idea of having a best on best format for the NHL. So more of it, please.
Yes, please.
I understand you have some apologies to make.
Oh man, I do. I'm sorry. Jordan Binnington, I'm sorry.
That hurts to say too.
I thought he could do it. I just didn't trust that he could. I knew he had it in him. I've seen him do it before. I just didn't have faith. Like I didn't know he could do it. Carey Price, I knew he can do it. Jordan Binnington, even at the start of that game, it was like, oh baby, okay, we're sliding around, we're swimming a little bit. But
you're waiting for that one just brutal goal that's going to sink you.
And we saw it on Saturday, which is
sure did.
what made it extra scary.
I think every game he had one that was just, you wanted back. But
even a bigger story to Sam Bennett.
I just want to make before we move on from Binnington.
Sure.
If Austin Matthews wasn't seeing Binnington in his nightmares,
my goodness,
Thursday night, the stops in overtime was unbelievable. It was like 3 within the first 3 minutes, just glorious chances for Austin Matthews. If there's one guy
possessed,
you don't want getting a good look with a puck on his stick in overtime of a chance, it's Austin Matthews. You know, how stupid would you have to be to leave Connor McDavid alone in the slot?
Austin Matthews.
Oh, shoot. Oops. Yeah, just incredible by Binnington, especially early in overtime, game on the line, just unbelievable. So
interesting. Was listening to Frank Corrado yesterday talking about that play with Connor McDavid in front, and everyone's been trashing Matthews for that misread. He said that's not Matthews. He said that's a defensive breakdown from the faceoff dot. He said the couple of guys that chase after, I forget exactly what it was for the play, but he said Austin Matthews is just trying to like cover for guys there. That's not his fault. That was a defensive breakdown for how the play is supposed to be. He said it's a 1 up, 1 down, where one guy goes above the circle, one guy goes below the circle. Anyway, he understands the game at a level that I probably never will, but he was kind of breaking it down a little bit. It was very interesting. So
I adore Frankie Corrado. If there was one guy I could choose to come on the show, it'd probably be Frankie Corrado. That guy has an understanding of the game and an ability to break it down so that idiots like me can follow it and go, oh, I get it now.
So agree. I so agree.
He's so good. If anybody's not following what Frankie Corrado's doing, start, because he's fantastic.
And anyway, he breaks it down on the Sekeres and Price podcast on the Friday show. So if you want to go watch it, I would recommend it. It's very good. But yeah.
Austin Matthews also recommends it.
Oh, yes, he does. Yes, he does. Jordan Binnington, incredible overtime, incredible third period. Sam Bennett, I am sorry. From the day that Team Canada announced the roster, I was very anti Sam Bennett, anti Brandon Hagel, anti Travis Konechny. I thought that guys like Matthew Barzal, Mark Scheifele, Connor Bedard should be there instead. And maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. I still think Mark Scheifele should be there. But Sam Bennett proved me wrong. He was the guy I was least in on. And I watched him through the playoffs the last couple of years. I saw what he did like en route to winning the cup last year. But I didn't think that he was the best of Canada. And I thought that this would be I guess I've only ever seen international competition where it's refed by IIHF. I didn't realize that you would need the big bodies in this kind of tournament. And I was totally proven wrong. You did need the big bodies, and you needed the guys that would go in the corners and win the puck battles and were fast and had a sneaky good shot. And Sam Bennett, I'm sorry, you completely shut me up. Actually, I was screaming pretty loud, so you made me scream in a very good way, and it was it was very it was a very good game.
It's a PG-13 show, man.
Anyway, yeah, just very good performance.
Mr. Sam Bennett, UFA coming up.
Yeah, something that I'm very intrigued to see if he leaves Florida or not. I know, of course, all of Leafs Nation is trying to convince him to come join them, but I would rather see him come play for Rick Tocchet.
From his current $4.425 million?
Yeah, I think so.
That goes up,
I think so. Yeah. Chris Johnson reported, and this was, I think, in the second intermission of the gold medal game. Sam Bennett has a game high 6 shots on goal in 8 minutes of ice time tonight, plus a big tying goal in the second period. That, like, I was looking through the shots for the game. I don't know if there was another guy who had more than 3.
There weren't an abundance of shots in that game.
No.
For a game that went that deep into an overtime period, there were not that many shots. So to have one guy racking up, you got to be playing your heart out, looking for those opportunities. Like a dog with a bone, right? That's my puck. Go get it.
The other guy, Brandon Hagel, another guy I doubted, another guy that showed up. Following the game on Saturday, this also reported by Chris Johnston, is quoted, Brandon Hagel, I was thinking to myself, lying in bed the night before the first game, if this is going to be like an all-star type thing, then I'm going to be so out of place because I'm putting my head through a wall tomorrow. That was my mentality. And I'm like, okay, I see why they wanted this guy there. And very interesting, the players themselves, I mean, if you take him at face value, the players themselves didn't know what the temperature of the game was going to be like, what the tempo was going to be like. No. I thought that was just a very insightful, honest, and well-appreciated comment by Brendan Hagel.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those, he was one of those, how would you describe it? Like a lightning rod for things, right? He's one of those guys that kind of set the tone for what this tournament was going to be in those early games. And it's like, okay, coming out of the gate, it's physical immediately. They kind of set the tempo for the whole tournament. And so glad it did. Like, if that first game had been really tame and not physical, you can almost see how the tournament might have kind of skewed that way a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, love that attitude there.
Yeah, he was a big answer to the Canucks, I think, for the Canada side.
Yeah.
Nathan MacKinnon with the MVP.
Yeah, I just made a brief note on that because we made a prediction before the tournament was really underway. I mean, it was after Canada's first game, I think, that we talked. Well, I think what the tournament really wants is a Sidney Crosby MVP, and he was certainly on his way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Crosby, I think, was solid throughout, but just really stood out in that first game. MacKinnon just excellent throughout.
Yeah.
His speed, I don't get a lot of opportunity to watch Nathan MacKinnon play. A couple times a year he plays the Canucks, really, is what I see. But man, it's game-breaking stuff, right?
It is. And I don't know if there's a guy that's more scary. Like Connor McDavid's there. I think it's those two that are like the scariest to have, like coming down the wing, flying at full speed. Like McKinnon is so jittery. I feel like Connor, he more just goes flat out speed until he runs out of space. McKinnon is so jittery. Like he will go down, like put his head down and just plow through, and then he'll stop, and then he'll do like a stick handling maneuver that is just going back and forth at like rapid speed. And then he will shift his shoulders and shift his hips, and then he will throw the puck up, and then he'll like scoot around. It's so frantic that as a defenseman, you feel like you're having a panic attack every time he's coming at you. Um, it's so fun to watch. It was so fun to see it at the biggest stage with the best teammates, the best line mates. And I completely agreed. I said it as the game ended. Like MVP has to go to McKinnon. He had an outstanding. He was so impactful for our team. That was something that I thought was lacking out of Connor McDavid. All through the game, I was saying to my family, I'm like, it has to be McDavid. Like he has to be the turning point. No McDavid in this game, because McKinnon's doing everything he can. There's one guy that's clearly like lacking. It's not living up to his potential, and that's McDavid. So to see McDavid get it, that was fantastic. But the guy who was really consistent through this tournament and consistent through that final game, in my opinion, was Nathan McKinnon. So really good to see him get the MVP. That was great.
Well deserved. Think you've got a Pietrangelo
Yes, I
hot
do.
take here?
So, I mean, I don't know if it's like a hot take per se, but Pietrangelo was it was Sidney Crosby, Drew Doughty, and Pietrangelo in 2014 on that Olympic team. He was obviously picked for this team. Canada likes to pick as many repeating players as they can, as many guys from the World Championships as they can, and past World Cups. So obviously he gets chosen. Then he decides to bow out. He bows out due to injury and wanting to stay healthy down a stretch run into the playoffs. Makes sense. It's fair. But I don't think Canada is going to take too kindly to that. That night, Alex Pietrangelo played 26 minutes the very night that he was bowing out of the tournament due to injury purposes, which did not go over overly well. My hot take is he's not going to get called for the Olympics next year, which is pretty bold. I think he beats out a lot of guys, but I think him turning his nose up to this tournament prevents him from going to the Olympics next year. What do you think?
I wouldn't really put anything past Team Canada's brass,
Pettiness
included. So I think there could be something there. And Pietrangelo, he's an excellent player, but it's not like he's Cale Makar out there, right?
Yeah, totally.
He's not really a game-breaking guy for you. I could definitely see them leaving him behind. Whatever reason they would give would probably be pretty suspect, because I think he's still one of, the best 7 or 8 defensemen that Canada would have to offer. But I could definitely see it.
Yeah.
That is an interesting take.
So I'll just leave it there. I don't know. See what happens. But that was kind of, it's like, I don't know. It feels very Team Canada to leave a guy behind that deserves to be there because he turned his nose up to the exhibition tournament the year before.
Now, I heard, and I'm going to have to check this when I'm editing, and if I'm wrong, I'll make a notation, but I believe it was Chris Pronger who was talking about, responding to people talking about Quinn Hughes missing the tournament. And he's saying, well, that's fine. Canada's missing Pietrangelo, and they cancel each other out. I'm like, okay, now that's a hot take. I don't know in what world you say Pietrangelo cancels out Quinn Hughes. He described Pietrangelo, and again, if this isn't Chris Pronger, I apologize and I'll correct it, but I'm pretty sure it was. He called Pietrangelo a perennial Norris candidate. And somebody did the research to look into that and said, I believe Pietrangelo has finished in the top 4 of Norris voting once and has gotten like no votes in the last 4 years or
Oh,
something. Like
jeez.
it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And it's one of those things where that's just not giving Quinn Hughes his dues, because Quinn Hughes is unbelievable and we see it game in and game out.
Yeah,
And
just
that is such a huge loss for Team USA. It's hard to overstate the significance of Quinn Hughes missing that.
this sounds like a guy that doesn't watch Western hockey. He
Past
doesn't
his
watch
bedtime or
hockey in the
something.
Western Conference. Because not only are you super duper wrong on a comparison between Canada or between Quinn Hughes and Pietrangelo, you're also making an incorrect statement about him being a perennial um, best defenseman of the year. Like,
He's a
come on, man.
perennial pretty good defenseman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's a guy any team would be happy to have, but he's not Quinn Hughes.
No, and he's not even in his prime either. Like, I understood it if he's in his prime. Maybe there's a little bit more of an argument there, but even then, it's Quinn Hughes. It's clearly Quinn Hughes.
The
It's
only even remotely comparable that Canada has for Quinn Hughes is Cale Makar.
yes,
That's it.
100%.
If Canada's missing Cale Makar and you say, well, that offsets Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, totally.
Yep,
100%. Yeah.
Quinn Hughes won the Norris, but Makar won it before him this year. Maybe one of them, maybe Werenski, but they're both right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that cancels out. That's a bit comparable. Pietrangelo, nah.
Yeah. Speaking of Quinn Hughes, he chose, well, I don't know if it was him. Someone chose Team Canucks over Team USA in that decision of whether he was going or not. I don't know. So what happened was the Team USA going into the finals was like, oh, we would really like to have Quinn Hughes, and maybe he'll be back. And now we have an injury to McAvoy, and he's not coming back. So maybe we can have Quinn Hughes join. And good on Team Canada. They were totally good with it. They said, yeah, bring whoever you want. That was been reported by the biggest insiders in the game.
Love that.
Yeah, me too. Then Quinn Hughes talks, like he's asked, and he talks about a desire to go, but can't commit at all. Then Mike Sullivan, coach for Team USA, says Quinn Hughes is coming, and just says that he's coming. He's joining the team. And then a little while after that, it comes out that Quinn Hughes will not be joining Team USA. Just a lot of confusion around all that, the rules and everything. But the reason for it is that he wasn't medically cleared. Now, I don't know who makes the decision on whether he's going or not. I don't know if that was the NHL saying it wasn't allowed, wanting to cover it up. I don't know if that's the Canucks saying we don't want you to go and covering. I don't know what happened there, or if it was Team USA trying to kind of push the Canucks into sending. I have no idea. But I'm, as a Canucks fan, very happy he didn't play, just due to the fact that he might not be playing tonight.
Being, of course, recorded on the 22nd.
Correct.
They play the Vegas Golden Knights tonight.
Thank you for noting that. Very interesting situation. My hunch, and this is just my opinion, is that the Canucks management and doctors and Quinn Hughes had a meeting and talked about, okay, what is this actually going to look like? And after going over everything, I think they probably just decided that this wasn't the best idea for continuing. As much as Quinn wanted to do it, the Olympics are next year. You're going to have your shot at a championship that really has all of the meaning. It's the biggest international tournament ever in the world. Yeah, and then there's the Canucks schedule on top of that. So they play, this is the 22nd, they play tonight versus Vegas. Then they play tomorrow versus Utah. Then they have 2 days off, and then they have another back-to-back in LA and Anaheim on the 26th and 27th. And then 2 weeks later, approximately 2 weeks later, they have, or 3 weeks later, they have Montreal and Calgary, and then another back-to-back of Blackhawks, Utah. So it's a lot of dense hockey, lots of 1 days off between games, and then multiple back-to-backs stacked on back-to-backs.
I think they have 14 games in 24 days or something.
That is so many games. So many games. And you're very, very much in a tight hunt for that last playoff spot. I think this was, I don't know who made the decision, but I'm grateful for it as a Canuck fan, and I think it was the right one for Quinn Hughes. What do you think?
I agree entirely. I also would have loved to have seen Hughes in that game. I think that turns the tide, and Quinn Hughes
Completely
alone
agree.
probably gets that game for the USA, puts them over the top. But I think it's the right call. I was under the impression the things I had been reading was that the only way Hughes would be allowed to go per the rules is if there was another injury on the USA blue line. And then there was talk about, well, Sanderson better have a bodyguard if he leaves his hotel room, because
And then he
somebody's going to come
scores.
and Tanya Harding him or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he scores, and it's just like, well, okay. I guess that's all fine. No, I'm glad. I think if he was allowed to go per the rules, I feel like his injury isn't so severe that he would have bowed out. I feel like he really wanted to go and probably would have gone if there was another injury and he was allowed. So I wonder if him potentially missing tonight's game is just, okay, well, you didn't go, you've gotten a lot of rest. Let's just give you another game or two and just make sure that you're 100%, because we've got a lot of hockey coming up. So
That's very
hard to
possible.
say. But as a Canucks fan, I'm very happy with the way that it all shook out.
So apparently he only skated like 3 times in the whole 2 weeks. Like, that's not someone who's up and ready to play in like the biggest stakes game, the most physical, the highest speed game we've seen in a very long time. Adam Foote was talking about how they were going to give him a good hard practice on Friday and see how he was feeling, if he'd even be good to go. So it's not like he's he's ready to go when the Canucks are good to go. It was just they wasn't medically cleared. No, he's actually, if he only skated a couple times, and
He's hurting.
Yeah, he's not 100%. So I think that adds to the decision to Quinn, just take this one off, and you've got a lot of Olympics, a lot of World Cups ahead of you. But the team that signs your checks and the fans that come watch you every game, they need you in the blue and white, or the red and black and orange, or whatever colors you're wearing.
Exactly. And hey, Hughes might have a little company, right, in the press box.
Yeah, he might.
We have some news regarding Elias Pettersson.
So we'll set this up by talking about the post by Cam Robinson, saying how he tweeted out, sources indicate that while the flu has spread around the 4 nations, Team Sweden wasn't just dealing with a little bug running through their team. Guys were ravaged, weak, dehydrated, surely impacted their play to a great level. So that makes us look at Elias Pettersson. Did that impact?
But isn't that what the team that lost would say?
I mean, that did
it's
cross
like when
my
I
mind
get a
as
cold,
soon as I read it.
and I tell my wife, well, it hits me differently. I got it worse than you did. It's not that I'm a big whiner. It's that I got it worse, right? It did, yeah. I mean, in my case, it's true. Everything hits me harder than it hits her. It's absolutely true.
So,
but
that tweet was from 4 days ago. And then I believe it was yesterday on 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman slightly touches on Elias Pettersson and talks about how, he had a rough tournament. But he knows that Petey's battling something, but that he's received a lot of pushback on it. And he reiterated a lot of pushback on it. And he said, I don't really know where to go from there or what to say. So I'm just going to leave it there. But it was just a very interesting comment of him being like, okay, I know Petey had a terrible tournament when everyone was hoping he was going to break out and this would be a good step forward for him. But I know he's dealing with something, but I know that I'm getting a ton of pushback on it. So just an interesting, I don't know what to take from it. Just interesting.
Now I have about 8,000 thoughts on on Pettersson, and it all kind of ties in with that Elliot Friedman quote. So I've kind of teased this a little bit with J-Dawg. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin with this. Right? There's layers to this. Right?
So start with your thought.
It's like an onion or an ogre. It's layers. Sorry, you want me to start with?
Start with your thought before the most recent update from yesterday, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, I've kind of visualized it as like an iceberg, right? There's the tip of the iceberg that's above the surface that you can see, right? The observable facts of the situation. Petey's struggling. We can see that. Trading Miller didn't change it. The Four Nations didn't change it. And I'd be willing to bet, whether Petey's back tonight or tomorrow or sometime next week, when play resumes for the Canucks, I bet it's more of the same, right? I don't think anything's going to change. So what's beneath the surface then? Well, it's the stuff that we can't see that we're kind of being told about and we have to infer. So his injury, right? Maybe it's as simple as a bit of nagging tendonitis that prevents him from playing to his full potential. Maybe the team just wants him to gut it out, suck it up, right? What did we hear from the Oilers after their playoff run, right? Draisaitl was basically chopped in half, right, for the second half of the playoffs, and he was still producing, right? So they're like, you can skate. We can see you skate. We can see you move and shoot the puck. So just do it. Figure it out.
But a flesh wound.
Right. So if the doctors say he's fit to go play hockey, I don't think the team wants to hear any excuses. And I think that's the pushback that Friedman is getting on the Pettersson injury. Is it's not that bad, right? The teams have dealt with many players before, many injuries. They've got a sense of what's significant and what isn't.
Quinn Hughes has a custom-made glove to fit his like cast or whatever it is on his hand.
Still trying to go play in the Four Nations. The man's a dog.
Dog.
But then even further down, I think there's perception and there's a PR battle raging here, right? So everything that we're hearing from Friedman, from Petey's agent, from Petey, from Canucks management, it's all spin and it's all PR, right? You have two competing sides and they each have their own motivations. And it's all self-serving, right? The Canucks are trying to do what's in their best interest. Petey and his agent, they're trying to do what's in their best interest. So what are those motivations, right? I think Petey, it's not about money. He's got his contract. He's at the very beginning of his contract. So his performance doesn't impact his earnings in any real way. So I think for him, it's about image. It's about marketing. He knows he's sucked. So he's kind of putting it out there at any opportunity that there is something, right? It's not me. It's my knee. It's that I couldn't train. So you hear it from his agent. You hear it from him. We saw him icing down his knee at the Four Nations. Now, coming out of the Four Nations, he's too injured to play. Now, is that a coincidence? Or is that him using the Four Nations as an excuse to try to maybe get some of the rest that he feels like he needs to deal with this injury? So this is so deep and so layered. And I think for the team's perspective, they don't want people thinking he's injured for probably a couple of reasons. One is if they do decide they want to move on from him, they don't want his trade value hurt any more than it already is, if there's potentially a lingering injury that could go on long term. And then if they do keep him, they want him to be a dog who's going to go through the wall and play for his team and not be slowed down by a little sore knee. They want him to gut it out like Draisaitl did. No love for Draisaitl, or not a lot anyways. But you got to give him credit. He played through it. And it reminds me of Kessler back in the day. Busted up his finger and he said, I don't care, chop it off. I got to get back out there and play. You want those guys on your team. So that's the first part of my thought. I'm going to pause, give you a chance to chime in. And
so 3 interesting things with this. One is prior to the tournament, and I think we talked about this last show. His agent, Elias Pettersson's agent, talked about how he was held back by his training. And then Elias was asked about that. And then he said, yeah, I felt like I started behind because I wasn't able to train because of the injuries and stuff that I had going on. But
it's hard to catch up in season.
Right. But said, like, that doesn't matter. I need to be better. I need to focus on tomorrow, and I'm not going to worry about the past. Okay. Then Elias Lindholm talks about how Pettersson is going to come out of this tournament and he's going to be way better. Like, you guys just watch, like, the final game of Sweden, USA, the only game that Sweden won in the tournament, Elias Pettersson played 10 minutes. He was benched in that game. He was a nothing burger the whole tournament. I believe Kevin Lankinen had more points than Elias Pettersson and JT Miller put together. I have to fact check that, but I believe he had an assist and both those guys had no points. So, and the coach for Team Sweden was the coach that Elias Pettersson had in junior when he was thriving. They had a great relationship, all that kind of stuff. So everything is there.
He was MVP.
Right. Yes. Everything was there for Petey to go off. And it was the opposite effect. He might have been the most underwhelming player in the tournament in terms of expectations. So it's a little nerve-wracking as a Canucks fan to see that, because you're like, well, you can't argue about his line mates. He's got Philip Forsberg and Kempe had probably he was the best Swede, probably. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Those are just some things to kind of add to your statement, your argument. So then we get news
from...
Hold on,
I'm not done with PD
yet.
yet.
Okay, here we go. Well, I mean, this adds to the PD, but continue.
It does. So then I got to thinking, okay, so that's looking at different perspectives, but what's it all mean, right? What's the takeaway from all this? And there's 3 things that can happen now. Only 3. They keep Petey past July 1st, and he's effectively a Canuck for a very long time. They trade him in the summer, prior to his no movement kicking in, get what they can, and he's somebody else's to deal with. Or they trade him in the next couple of weeks prior to the deadline, which I believe is March 7th.
Correct. I believe so. Yeah.
So again, what I decided to do was look at this from not the Canucks perspective or even Pettersson's, but from any team that's looking at acquiring Elias Pettersson. So what are their considerations when they're looking at this? Well, there's a lot of risk here, right? Pettersson at his best, 40 goals, 100 points, probably MVP votes, Selke votes. He's dynamic. He's driving offense. He's incredible. Petey, where he is now, he's probably a 2C, maybe even a 3C.
He's a good 3C
team.
Yeah.
Well, even the way he's playing now, right? He's probably still, somewhere in the 50 to 60 point range.
And defensively sound. Yeah, sure. Solid 2C.
Probably gets you close to 20 goals. Like that's a solid league average 2C.
Yeah.
3C on a good, Petey as a 3C on a contender, incredible. Perfect fit.
He's playing as a poor man's Aho right now.
Yeah. So, okay, what's that guy worth? Right? A guy who gets you 20 goals, plays 3C or 2C, 50 to 60 points. It's not 11.6, fine, but what is it?
Six and a
Well,
half, 7.
yeah, so the Panthers just signed for Hagee for 7. Seth Jarvis signed 7.4. Buchnevich signed for 8. Those guys are all, a little under point per game, and they might not be great comparables, but it gives you kind of a ballpark, right? Right now, Canucks fan probably takes any of those guys over Petey. Um, so you're probably in the ballpark, 6.5. Let's call it 6.5. So we've got $5 million of dead space, potentially. That's the risk any acquiring team is looking at, having $5 million of effectively dead cap on their books for 7 years. What does it cost a team to get out of a bad contract in today's NHL? Right?
So today's NHL or tomorrow's NHL?
So that's a good point. We do have the cap going up significantly, and that does change the equation a little bit. But we've seen teams trade first round picks to get out of a year or two
Yep.
of a couple $1 million.
In dead cap. Yeah.
Yeah. If we're talking potentially 7 years of $5 million of dead cap, that's massive. So that's the risk that any acquiring team is looking at. So if you trade for Pettersson in the summer, what do you know about him? What do you know about his fit on your team? What do you know about his ability to turn it around? If you think that the fit is a problem and that a fresh start somewhere is what Pettersson needs, you trade for him now and you get a month or two with him on your team. You get a good look at him, you see the fit, you get more information about him, and then if you don't like what you see, you have the opportunity to move him prior to July 1st and try to recoup something of what it cost you to acquire him. So you can mitigate your risk as the acquiring team, but you've got to do it now. So for me, the trade deadline is truly the trade deadline for Pettersson. I don't see a trade happening if they keep him past the trade deadline, because the risk for an acquiring team then is just off the charts. So that's my thought. What do you think?
So I think it's easier to move him to certain locations than you might think, and that's mostly because of the rising cap. Um, the the deadline cap space, according to Puckpedia, for the Columbus Blue Jackets is $87 million.
Wait, what?
That's what it says. So that's how much they could take on for the last bit of the players as contracts, because they have so much cap space. Next season, their projected cap space is $46 million. They have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of young guys. I think with the rising cap, there's going to be issues of certain teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and the Columbus Blue Jackets to actually just hit the floor, because the floor is also going up quite a bit. I think that taking on big contracts is not as much of a worry. Having $5 million dead cap is not as much of a worry for teams like that, rather than teams like the Canucks, the Leafs, the big dog teams. And Columbus does have some UFAs coming up, but they've got Marchenko at 3.8. They've got Boone Jenner at 3.7. They've got Cole Sillinger, 21 years old, really good player, at 2.2. Yegor Chinnikov at 2.1. Kent Johnson at 1.8. Adam Fantilli at 950,000. That's all next year. They have got so much cap space that they can do a lot, I think. And there's going to be a lot of work to be done there. But I think if they wanted him and they think that he can help their team, they can make it work quite easily. And I think Pettersson still is. I think he's still got it. I don't think he's forgot how to play hockey, but I do think he might need a change of scenery. We'll see. Anyway, just I think the cap space problem was much more relevant the last 5-7 years. I think going forward, it's going to be much easier for certain teams to acquire him. And I look at Columbus specifically. Their general manager is Don Waddell. Don Waddell actively was looking at and got very close to trading for Elias Pettersson at the deadline last year. And I believe he said recently that he still has interest in him. So anyway, they've got a lot of prospects, a lot of cap space. I would be interested to see, and that's a team that is borderline on a playoff spot right now and has not had a lot of success in a long time, and their fans could really use a superstar to go with their young guys. So I don't know.
You've got a chance to get one here for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. Now,
And so I think sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but one more point that I think from Vancouver's perspective, what they're really craving right now is certainty, right? They want to know what they have in their players, right? And I think Pettersson is a big question mark. So if you're paying 11.6, you want a guy who's giving you that extra bit that you can't replace by committee, right? Right now, you can replace what Pettersson's offering you with a solid defensive forward and a guy who can score some goals on the wing, right? It's replaceable. If you had Nathan MacKinnon, right, you can't replace what he brings as an individual guy on the ice. Even if you took his money and you split it between a couple of guys, you're not getting the same value. But it feels like with what Pettersson's bringing right now, they could replace it by committee and be much safer for it.
I feel like we're kind of seeing that with the Miller trade that just happened.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah. So that's why I think it makes a ton of sense that Vancouver moves on from Petey.
So so let's bring up the update first. The update we received yesterday from iMac. On X, he said, per Canucks coach Rick Tocchet, centerman Elias Pettersson, status is day-to-day with injury from Four Nations, which again is very, very intriguing to the conversation we've been having. Now is that, he said injury specifically, he didn't say illness, so interesting. It says, he said also, doesn't appear Quinn Hughes will be ready to play Saturday versus Vegas. So he has not ruled out either guy for sure for Vegas or for Utah this weekend. Said both Pettersson and Hughes left the ice shortly after today's practice began. So again, not sure really how to take that, but interesting. Now, my thinking as of late has shifted a little bit on Elias Pettersson, in that I could be convinced easier than in the past to keep Elias Pettersson through the summer and into next year. The reason for that is that if this guy really isn't happy and he needs a change, I think he'll work with you on a change of scenery. I don't think it's going to be... I don't know. I don't think he would be like JT Miller, where it's like, I have one team that you can trade with and that's it. I think he would be easier to work with, because if he's unhappy and we're unhappy, then I think we both want a change of scenery. If you were to have that conversation with him and be like, hey, we're going to give you more time, but like, we need production. And if you need a change of scenery, and like, we'll try and make that happen later. Like, if you're not getting anything that's even close to value for him, I wonder if you do, and you sell higher. Like, I wonder if you can sell higher to one team than you could to the whole market right now. Like, sell higher to one team when he's playing a little bit better in next October, say, or next November, than you could to the whole market right now. I don't know the answer, and I don't even know if I'm convinced to go that way, but I could be more easily convinced to go that direction as of late.
It scares me giving that much control to the player.
Me too.
Odds are the teams that would be most interested in taking him on are the teams that historically players are least interested in going to. So that's a huge gamble, right? And my whole thing around this is about risk, right?
Yeah.
What's the risk for each side? And I think for a team looking for certainty, I think one path offers that a little more than the others. But I'm beyond fascinated to see how this
Oh,
turns
me
out.
too. Me
And we've
too.
talked about how much trust we have in the management and their knowledge and their ability to scout players and bring in guys that are going to be good fits for the team. So I'm super excited to see how it turns out. I do believe if they don't trade him, that he. I think if they don't trade him, they just have confidence deep down that it is just a health thing, and
Hmm.
that time off in the summer and training will make it better.
But
But
you
they're trying to
think
send a message now that we want you to be a certain kind of player.
they would defend him a little bit more if that was the case? Them being so openly against him talking about his injuries makes me think that they don't think it is injury related, in which case you can't really make a lot of excuses then. Like whether it's injury related or not, if they even half think it's injury related, why wouldn't they protect the guy? So,
Yeah, it's another one of those situations where I feel like we certainly don't know what the truth is, but I can tell you with a fair degree of certainty that the truth isn't what either side is telling us. Right?
yes, true.
It's something else or some combination of the two.
Yeah,
But everybody in this situation is self-serving in some way or another. So
very motivated for their own
yeah,
ambitions. Now, quickly, I'll put my hat on for trading Pettersson. And the reasons that I'm for that, besides just his play and I want to have a better player, is I am not interested in seeing what Pettersson's going to do in September, October, because I need Quinn Hughes to be doing everything he can with this team now. And I need a team around Quinn Hughes to do everything they can now. I'm not interested in postponing this and having this be another drama piece for the team and another reason why Quinn Hughes maybe wants to go somewhere else. I want to get rid. It doesn't matter if we lose Pettersson for nothing if it means that Quinn Hughes remains happy and remains a Canuck. I really couldn't care less. The other thing is, if we move Pettersson and if we move him for dime on the dollar, we're opening up $11.5 million of cap space. I
and there are
I
some good free
wonder
agents coming up too.
I wonder if you even moved him for a second round pick, which is very minimal return. Very minimal return. That with a second round pick and cap space, if you couldn't get close to like if you can go like in theory, guys like Mitch Marner, guys like Mikko Rantanen are going to be free agents this summer. In
Sam
theory,
Bennett.
Sam Bennett. Could you not get close to returning? Again, I'm not saying that that's the best option. We're in a real bad situation right now. And unless he decides to get going, it's not going to really change, I don't think. But we got like 2 weeks till the deadline. We got to make a decision and a decision. Well, in theory, like we possibly need to make a decision for by this deadline to see like whether we're going to actually try for a playoff run here with someone else. And if not, then it's the summer's coming very quick and July 1st is coming very quick. So I'm like with you. This is going to be very interesting to see how this progresses. But I think I lean more on team Quinn Hughes and I don't care. I don't want any more drama. I want a team that is competitive. I want a bunch of Philip Hedels on this team. I don't need a bunch of Elias Petterssons, is my feeling. I think Quinn Hughes, I think Elias Pettersson at his best with Quinn Hughes at his best are both like, that's a team that's instantly competitive. But at Quinn or Elias Pettersson at his worst, I think drags the team to a point where they're hardly a playoff team. If you have Philip Hedel, which is better than Pettersson at his worst, but worse than Pettersson at his best, at least we're then competitive. And I just want to remain competitive every year with Quinn Hughes. That's where I'm at.
I think that's a great description, and I feel like it throws weight behind my opinion, which I'm going to take the bold stand and say that March 8th, Elias Pettersson is not a Canuck.
Whoa. I hope so. I mean, I think I hope so. I
What's
think
your
I
gut
hope
tell
so.
you? There's of those three scenarios. He's gone by the deadline, gone by July 1st, or stays a Canuck into next year.
My gut tells me gone by July 1st. My heart
Excellent.
wants gone by the deadline if you can get an okay return.
I think an okay return is probably not really in the realm. I think if you can get one piece back that is going to be useful, for sure going to be useful, whether that's a young guy who's going to be a player or, a reasonably high end draft pick. I don't know what more than that they can reasonably expect.
Could we get back the Miller package again for
I don't know
Pettersson?
if you could.
Which is
Yeah,
wild.
I feel like in the last couple weeks, it went from, if you trade Petey's the more marketable guy. He's the guy who's going to get you the bigger package and be easier to trade to more teams. I feel like it's shifted completely. I feel that more teams would have taken right now JT Miller than Elias Pettersson.
Yep.
I think it's gone that downhill in the
and
past couple weeks.
his performance in the Four Nations just
did no favors for anybody involved.
No.
Not teams looking at him, not the Canucks, not himself.
I mean, it did favors for teams that if there's anyone out there that is, I can fix this guy no matter what, and there is very much that thinking in the NHL. You don't get to those levels without having the cockiness of I can do anything. It helps those guys' negotiations, I think, but yes, that's the only people it helps.
But we don't want those guys.
We don't want those people.
Did all us right. No favors at all. But how about a couple of things that did do us favors?
We sure did.
Change the tempo a little bit.
We sure did.
Which one you want to go to first?
I'm going to go to the one that happened first. Mr. Drew O'Connor signing a 2-year, $2.5 million extension. We have now locked up both players from the Pittsburgh trade, Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, for very, I would say, team-friendly, cap-friendly contracts, considering with the cap going up over the next few years. Very excited. Really, really fits the culture and type and style of team that I think we're wanting to see more of out of the Canucks. A style that we've enjoyed watching for the last couple of weeks out of the Canucks. Couldn't be happier. And what was the other one?
Well, I just want to make a point on Drew O'Connor before we get to the other one. And that is Drew O'Connor kind of brings you that Dakota Joshua energy from last year. Mm-hmm. And they sign him for $1 million a year less than Dakota Joshua, and the cap's going up. It's, I think it's a fantastic deal. I am all aboard for the Drew O'Connor era in Vancouver.
Me
super
too.
Excited to see what he brings over the next couple of years.
Me too.
Going even further down the road than that, for the next 5 years, we get to enjoy Mr. Kevin Lankinen.
Kevin!
5 years at 4.5, which is less than I think what other comparable goaltenders have been getting lately for those kind of not really a backup, but not really a full-fledged starter kind of guy. They've been in the 5 million range. At 4.5, I love this deal.
So happy with the cap going up in a league where you need at least two good goaltenders to do any kind of run. So happy. This guy went to play for Finland and looked awesome. He beat out UC Saros for most of that tournament. Happy.
He got pulled versus Canada, but come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That means nothing.
Yeah. And Finland had no defense left. They had lost all of their defense prior to the tournament. So happy with that contract. Continued tidy work by management. And it feels like when they make a mistake, they continue, they then do 3 great deals or trades. And I don't know if I've ever believed in management as much as I do this regime. The 2011 management was fantastic. I was maybe a little young to really know the ins and outs of it. So happy with this management and the deals they're making. I think the Lankinen, and I listened to the interview they did, I believe, yesterday following the contract signing. And he was talking about how he turned down a few other teams in the summer. He wasn't looking to just get a job. He said it wasn't to do with that. It was finding the right place. And he could have stayed in, I think it was Nashville, but he wanted to get more opportunity. He wanted to show that he's like, I am a top goaltender of this league, and I just needed to show it. And he felt that Vancouver was a home immediately for him, and he was very happy to sign that deal. So,
And it's interesting, he was looking for that opportunity. And going into the season, I don't think you would have said that Vancouver was an opportunity for a goaltender to show that he can be a starter, because Vancouver has Thatcher Demko.
But the team knew that Thatcher was going to take a bit to get back. So I think they said, if you come sign
Kevin
with
Lankinen
us.
Didn't.
But they would have talked to him.
Maybe.
I think they said, hey, we don't know what our goalie situation is going to be like. There's a good chance you're going to get a couple months of being the guy on a team that was a division winner last year and was one game away from being in the third round. Would you like to join? Like, have that be your debut? You got Quinn Hughes ahead of you, just so you know.
Yeah. I mean, that great opportunity for him. And you're right. That was probably a big part of the pitch to him, was that there's a good chance you're going to have good opportunity here. And as a insurance policy against Demko's continuing injury problems, it's great value, right? If Demko gets healthy and he's perfectly healthy next year, you're still paying less for your tandem of Demko and Lankinen than I think probably most teams in the league are for their tandems.
And what a great tandem.
And what a great tandem. And to hear him talk about the way he approaches the game, his preparation, always being ready to play. My focus is just on, being ready, being the best that I can be. I'm not worried about, am I the starter? Am I 1A? Am I 1B? It doesn't matter. I'm just focused on being the best that I can be, so that when my name gets called to play, I'm ready and I'm going to give my team a chance to win. Absolutely. It's exactly the mindset that you want. Just a guy who wants to help out the team, be ready to go, and stay prepared. I love it.
Totally.
Seems like such a humble guy, good attitude, good vibes.
And so many good vibes in this locker room all of a sudden. All of a sudden, it is a team that is happy. They're talking about how happy they are to be at the rink and how good the team culture is. Like, guys are specifically bringing those topics up. And as a fan, it's like, oh, good. I can breathe fresh air again. It feels very nice.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that these guys that they're bringing in, Marcus Pettersson, Kevin Lankinen, Drew O'Connor, are guys with good attitudes, and good in the room,
and teachable, and
teachable and hardworking, and they're prepared and ready to go. Like, they're building a certain type of team, and it's the type of team that I think the Dawgs on Skates is a big fan of.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Well, let's continue on to the next segment. With this next segment, we are going to be exiting the world of Canucks land, the sometimes all-consuming world of Canucks land, and entering just the world of sports in general. And that starts with the Seth Jones talk that has kind of come out of nowhere towards the end of this tournament.
I don't know about out of nowhere. I feel like there might be a lot of those feelings in Chicago.
I wasn't hearing a lot of rumblings up until this kind of came suddenly. So Ben Pope on Twitter said Seth Jones says he's talking with the Blackhawks about the possibility of a trade. Quote, I would like to give myself a chance to win in my career. I know the money is not an easy thing to move. That's what we're figuring out. Very kind of interesting. And again, I didn't really see this coming. It makes sense, but I didn't really see it coming. Now, I think you have his contract information there. What is his AAV again?
We've got 5 more years at 9.5 after this season.
Wow. That's, yeah. He is right. That is not going to be easy to move.
No. The one thing that I think he's got going for him is that I think, even to this point, Seth Jones is not a bad hockey player,
Right.
right? Like the only issue is that, to quote Luongo, my contract sucks, right?
Yes.
That's all it is. If they were paying him 5.5 million to get what they're getting out of him, probably nobody cares,
Yeah.
right? It's the 9.5. It's the Pettersson problem. If we were paying
Totally.
Pettersson $6 million to do what he's doing, nobody cares.
We were paying DeBrusque 5.5, and he hasn't looked like amazing. Now he does lead the team in goals, but he hasn't looked amazing. But that's fine
Nope,
because he's making 5.5. That's okay.
absolutely. So I think you had something on. Well, we mentioned the reason for his request. He wants to go to a winner.
So he was asked specifically the reason for his trade request, and he said, "I think things are moving forward in Chicago, but my timeline might be different from Kyle and Norm's and the Blackhawks. So essentially, I think this team is taking steps in the right direction, but it is way slower than my career allows for if I want to have a chance at having a competitive career, because he's kind of always been on pretty bad teams for most of his entire career. So I think this is him looking around and being like, oh man, I'm a better defenseman than I'm being shown here in Chicago. And I want to go actually have a chance to win with some of the best players in the league, which totally makes sense, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what more I have to add on that. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world that a player would want to move on and go somewhere where he has a chance to win. Having said that, a contract's a contract. I never really like the trade requests going public. But I also understand you're your own person. You have your own motivations. This is your life. You want a chance to be successful and on a winning team. So you can't really begrudge him that. But at the same time, yeah, you signed the deal.
And now he's having like one of the best seasons of his career this year. Maybe do you want to look up his hockey DB just to look at the stats what he's got this year?
Yeah, I did have it up. I don't think it's one of the best that he's had, but it's kind of fine. I think it's kind of in line with the non terrible year that he had. Like he had
right.
a dreadful year. I think it was in 2001. That was just brutal. But aside from that, he's been a fairly consistent point producer. His plus minus is terrible, but that's because he's been playing on Chicago for 4 years.
Yes.
So exactly. I don't know how much I'd read into that, but yeah, I think if he plays the full year, he's going to get you 10 goals, probably 40, maybe more points. He's a useful guy. He's got good size. He's right-handed.
Do you have his points so far this year? In how many games?
26 in 38 games.
That's very good.
That is good.
That's very good.
Yeah.
That's close to 50 points.
In 21-22, he had 51 points in 78 for Chicago.
And this is on Chicago. This is a team that's been very bad. So you put him on a better team, I think he could be good. Now I don't think he's 9.5 million good necessarily. He might be more like Hronik level. But I think he could be very good. And again, I haven't seen him on a good team. So maybe he is really good, but I need to see him play with more talented players. Now,
when you go from Columbus to Chicago, that's...
Yeah, exactly. Nick Foligno, the captain of the Blackhawks, was asked about Seth Jones and how he felt about that situation. He said, quote, "He's a pro. He's going to continue to show up. Whether he feels a certain way, I can't control that, right? It's his own life. It's his own career. You support him. Obviously, you wish he felt differently, but he has his reasons, and rightfully so." Which I think is a very just good, solid captain comments. I don't think there's too much to pull from it, but it's, I guess, good to see that he's not salty. He's not, this isn't coming out of anger towards the teammates or towards the team. It's just Seth knows how much runway he's got, and it's not as much runway as he's going to need to be competitive continually in Chicago, I don't think.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that's very interesting is that when he was in Columbus, Seth Jones, he played with Zach Werenski. And Zach Werenski has been very open and talking about how much he would love to have Seth back and playing together again. And he was asked about it. And he said, I'd be open to it. I love playing with him. As a friend, we're close. And on top of that, and that was from Mark Shag, I believe his name is, on Twitter. And then Aaron Pornsline talked about how Zach Werenski did not take the optional this morning, but will play tonight. He said he had dinner on Friday with Chicago's Seth Jones, a longtime friend and former teammate. So maybe there's a little bit of talk about trying to get him over. I mean, maybe I think Seth Jones probably wants to go over there anyway, but I would just put it out there that I think there might be smoke of Seth Jones to Columbus, which would make their defense even better.
And wouldn't that be interesting if they take on two of what are sometimes perceived to be potentially terrible, maybe worst contracts in Pettersson and Seth Jones.
My goodness. No kidding. But they've got the cap space. We just went over that. They have a lot of cap space. So,
and they'd be getting good to potentially great players back for that risk.
And and Zach Werenski is having a year this year. He has been going off and was one of the best players in the Four Nations tournament as well. So anyway,
I think the Norse is largely considered to be Hughes, Makar, and Werenski.
Exactly, which is
this year.
No one would have expected that coming into the season.
No.
Well, we'll just leave
you're a filthy, filthy liar.
Yes. Well, we'll leave that there. And the other thing I want to talk about was the Jays Guerrero talk. Now you're the Jays guy between the two of us. I'm more recent, a newer addition to the fan base there. But I want to kind of see, what are your initial thoughts on this?
This is
and what happened.
Super frustrating for a Jays fan. So Guerrero has been this upcoming star on a meteoric rise for the better part of a decade now. Since he was a young guy, before he ever got signed, there were signs that he was going to be something special. He comes in, he's special out of the gate. He has like an MVP caliber season right out of the gate. And then he has a little bit of a down year. And the opportunity that was there for the Blue Jays to sign him long term at a reasonable value, and they dropped the bag. And I don't know what the motivation was in waiting until he was in his final year to really start to negotiate with him. But now he's got all of the leverage. And now you've seen mammoth contracts go out to Shohei Ohtani, mammoth contract to Juan Soto. And far beyond what anybody thought these guys were going to get a couple of years ago. So you know that if Vladdy Guerrero goes to free agency, he is going to get a mammoth contract from somebody. So in his mind, he's got a number, right? And we got a clip here that kind of talks about the number. Actually, why don't we play that clip first? And then
Vladdy was asked about the negotiations and how he felt they went.
Yes. So this is through an interpreter initially, and then you'll hear from Vladdy directly at the end of the clip, a very short answer, and then we'll get into it. So here's Vladdy through his interpreter.
I have my number all along. I changed it a little bit. I try, but still, it just didn't happen.
Were they close?
No.
Were they close? And then from Vladdy's mouth directly, no.
He didn't even wait for the interpreter. He knew that.
Nope. They were not close. It's not, we tried, we were getting closer. No, they were not close. And he said he had his number, but he changed it a little bit as time went on. And boy, does that open up a lot of questions, right? Because you could see a scenario in which Vladdy had a number. Maybe last year he had a number, and the Jays were like, we want to wait and see. We want to wait and see. And then Soto gets signed, and Vladdy looks at his numbers, and he looks at Soto's numbers, and he goes, I am not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not wrong.
Is he younger?
Yes, I do believe. But he's got, in Vladdy's best years, which, I mean, he hasn't had a lot of years, but he's had numbers comparable to Juan Soto. He can be that guy. So now, do I think he's looking for $760 million, Juan Soto money? No, I don't think he is. But would I be surprised if he's thinking, if I go to free agency, some team's going to pony up big bucks and I could make $600 million? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's in his head. And I think, we don't tend to hear as much about the contract offers from MLB, it seems, as stuff that gets leaked from the NHL. But I don't think they're remotely close to that. I wouldn't be surprised if they were hundreds of millions of dollars apart on their offer, because they've seen Vladdy have an MVP caliber season. They've also seen him struggle, where his batting average wasn't great. He wasn't getting on base, right? He wasn't hitting for power. He was just kind of there, and they've seen that. And I think they're worried about it, and they're really trying to leverage his down seasons into getting him locked up on a cheap deal. But it's not going to happen. It is super clear to everybody that he's not going to sign a sweetheart deal to stay in Toronto. I think he loves Toronto. I think he wants to stay in Toronto. He said that all along, but he's not going to take a sweetheart deal of $300 million to stay in Toronto for his entire career. And you can't really blame him for it.
And Vladdy told the media that his dream is to win the championship in Toronto and take his championship ring and give it to his dad, who was never able to win that championship in the league. Man, I would really hate it if he left and won it somewhere else, like the Yankees or the Red Sox.
I'm pretty sure that Vladdy was born in Canada.
I think there's a good chance of that.
Yes, in Montreal.
Okay, yeah.
So, man was born in Canada, wants to play in Canada. I don't know, even just from a marketing, from a jersey sales, from a a fan relations.
I mean, this fan base loves him. Yeah,
absolutely.
And plus, you can't get any other free agents.
Guy, right? Like, okay, you got Santander, you got Tony Taters, and I love it. Yeah. I love they got Tony Taters, just because I get to say Tony Tater. I think that's great. And I think he's going to give a lot of, pop to their lineup. But if that comes if you're saying Tony Taters is in and now we don't feel like we have to pony up for Guerrero, that's a huge mistake. Because if you now sign Guerrero and you lock him up, you've got Santander and you've got Guerrero, right? Now you're starting to look like a serious team again. And now maybe you can attract those free agents.
And Bo also said he just wants to go and play wherever Vladdy is. Just saying.
Yeah, and Bo wants to win, right? It's clear. Bo wants to win. Bo wants to get paid. Bo's an incredible player. He's had a down stretch here as well. But the team was down. The team had a lot of uncertainty. The team wasn't signing their young stars to keep them around. What message is that sending?
Well, and Ross Atkins, GM Ross Atkins, was asked about not getting the deal done. Have a listen.
Ross, how is this front office kind of feeling? What are your thoughts right now, knowing that you guys could not come up with.
Yeah, obviously very disappointed. We worked very hard. The motivation is still there. Confident that every thought, idea we had, every dollar that we had was communicated. So, but we're obviously disappointed to not have gotten that done. Doesn't change our desire. We will certainly be motivated and remain motivated.
They communicated every dollar. Remember that phrase, because I think we've got another clip here from Shapiro. Actually, let's just play that one before we get into the talk here.
So why didn't this get done, Mark, given all those things that you just listed off?
Because when you go into a negotiation, each side has rationale for a number, and in this case, we couldn't align on a common number that shared risk. Both sides take some on, and a decision from both parties couldn't be found.
Vlad said you guys weren't close. Could you maybe give us a general theme?
Yeah, I don't know what there's no such thing as close or not close. There's done or not done.
Mark, could you just maybe describe the degree of gap? Like you said, there wasn't enough alignment. How misaligned do you sense you guys were?
A lot of progress was made, over the last few days. But again, when it comes to getting a deal done, it's either done or not done. And I'm not comfortable talking about details of a negotiation. Never would be.
We made progress, but there's no such thing as close.
I would respectfully disagree.
I don't think that one makes sense there, Mr. Mark.
I think hundreds of millions of dollars, not close. I think if you were $5 million apart on a 15-year deal, if he was looking for $550 and you were offering $545, I'd say that was close. I'd say you could probably get that deal over the finish line.
So they spend the last few years saying we're close. We're just, a couple of pieces away. We're close. We're 2 pieces away. Now there's no such thing as close or not close.
Well, in a negotiation.
If close or not close doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist.
I mean, Vladdy knew. Vladdy knew they weren't close.
In not even his native language.
No hesitation. Were you close? Nope. And then it really makes you wonder, the fact that Shapiro will say that progress was made. What were you offering this guy out of the gate? If you moved, somewhat significantly, let's say, and you were still not even in the ballpark, how insulting was your offer? Were you not looking? If all they were doing was looking at their own team, right, and didn't pay attention to any of the other deals that were getting signed, I could see how you could lowball Vladdy and say, well, this is how much money we have to spend. We want you on the team, but we have to fill out a roster. But let's be real. It's a market value situation, right? Vladdy might be willing to take a little bit of a haircut to stay in Canada, to stay with Toronto. Maybe. I will give him that. He has said that he wants to stay. But I think you're talking about like a couple $1,000,000 a year he might take off. He might play in Canada for $39 million a year versus $40 million a year, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to play for half of what he's worth just to stay in Toronto, nor should anybody expect him to.
No.
So you do the math, right? And if you can't afford him, if the purse strings are done up too tight, and they're not going to open the wallet and pay Vladdy what the market is saying Vladdy's going to be worth or something close to it, then you're not going to win. You're not going to win.
Then you move him last year or the year before. That's the thing I don't understand, is they have kept him and decided to just not move him and also not want to sign him. What was your plan? Is your plan just to walk him to free agency? Like, are you doing the LA Angels version of we will just carry you right to free agency. We'll give you a hug and never see you again. I
Just
don't
begging you the whole way. Please don't go. Please
Yeah.
don't go. Please stay for free.
I don't know what the plan is and what's new. When has there ever been a plan with this regime? It's such buffoonery. It makes no sense. I can't remember which one, if it was Atkins or Shapiro, but one of them was talking a little bit longer, like outside of the video clip we have, about how it was going to be record-breaking money. And someone pipes up, one of the reporters, and they're like, "You mean Blue Jays record breaking money, right?" He's like, yeah, record breaking for the Blue Jays. They're like, obviously, we haven't had any big contracts. Of course it's going to be record breaking. Like, don't try and spin this like we're so stupid. And I think that's the thing that is driving Jays fans crazy, is they are saying, "Oh, you dumb children. I am going to just tell you reasons as to why it's not." It's like 5-year-old comes over and asks, "Hey, can you put my favorite show on?" And be like, "Oh, sorry, they're not on TV today." Even though they're on YouTube, they're on TV. You're just telling them because they don't know any better and you don't want to listen to it. You can't do that to Jays fans. They know what's going on. They know how baseball works. I don't understand this belittling of not only your players, but now also your fan base, and saying, "No, there's no such thing as close or not close." You morons. Have a pulse of what the fan base knows, what the fan base is. The whole country has supported this one team for decades, and you continue to treat them like dumb little children. And I'm so disappointed that we keep having to go through this over and over. But I'm not the diehard Jays fan for the many years. How do you feel about this, Andy?
Well, let's talk about what a record-breaking Blue Jays contract would look like. Right now, the record for the largest Blue Jays contract in terms of total value. You want to guess?
Is it George?
It is George.
Ooh.
Do you know what George's total value is?
150 mil.
It is precisely 150 mil.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I must have heard that on a podcast, and it was in the recesses of my brain, but I didn't actually know what that total value was. Okay.
6 years, 150, 25 million a year. Now, if we want to look at it as, okay, what's the highest contract in terms of annual salary, then that's actually Vladdy right now.
Okay.
28.5. So, even if you were saying, well, we don't want to give Vladdy a raise, which would be insane because his performance has been more than adequate to deserve a raise with inflation and everything else. Of course he should get a raise.
He was great on a bad team, and you can't recruit free agents to help him. Of course he's going to get a raise.
But let's just say that you live in a world where you could justify not giving Vladdy a raise. Okay. 28 million. What would that be over 15 years? It's 28, 280 plus 140, 420 million. Is that right?
I'll double check it.
Thank you.
Yeah. 420. Well done.
420.
Nice.
So if you're thinking you're going to lock Vladdy up for his career, right? 15-year deal, take him to age 40. He's 25 now. That number, the number that shouldn't embarrass you, should start at 420. The Jays' record is 150.
Yep.
I bet if it gets leaked, their offer's in the threes.
Jeez.
I bet.
Oh,
and it's probably not
goodness.
for 15 years. It's probably in the threes for 10 years.
Under 10? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness.
10 years, 300 million or something. And I don't know anything. I'm just a guy. This isn't even a baseball podcast.
Well, they're really trying to talk to us like we don't know anything. We've never seen a baseball before.
Yeah. So I don't think they're remotely close. Vladdy clearly doesn't think they're remotely close. So that's my guess. If I were a betting guy, I'd say 300. Maybe they moved up to 350 because they were thinking they were being generous. And Vladdy's probably thinking it should start with a 6. And I don't think he'd necessarily be wrong to do so. So you're at half. Half of what the guy thinks he's worth. That deal's not getting done.
Vladdy, was it close? No, that's not
No.
close.
But remember, Vladdy's just confused because there is no close. He's only done or not done. So, unfortunately, we're just on the wrong side of that coin.
I'm going to be
done.
cooking some chicken or something. My wife's going to ask me, hey, is it close? I'm like, there's no such thing as close. It's either done or not done.
It'll be done when it's done. Well, I'm trying to time the pasta. Listen, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you.
I've
Maybe
made progress. I've made
you're
progress.
new to this whole situation, but us experienced executives know.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
I
the
get
chicken's made progress. That's all I can
smacked
tell you.
upside the head's what's going to happen. Okay.
I got a couch you can sleep on, but it's a bit of a drive.
Well, do you have any final thoughts on that before we move on?
It's been nice having you, Vladdy, and Bo. Both of you. I'm not going to blame you when you move on. It's going to be sad. This team is going to suck for a while. I wish that they would just pony up and pay you. I wish they had done it as early as possible. You know these are good players. When the moment you're eligible to re-sign them, you do it. Right? As soon as the Canucks are able to negotiate Quinn Hughes' next contract, do you not think that they're going to be all over that immediately? Of course they are. They don't want to risk him even thinking about free agency. You do it as soon as you're able to.
Completely agree.
It's incompetence, negligence. It's all of those things. It is what it is. And I think we've had this conversation before about my view of sports ownerships. The owner of a sports team should never view that team as a business beyond what it takes to be in like a positive cash flow situation. You should run a profitable team, but it should not be the endeavor to maximize profit. I think that sports teams, owners, are stewards of the team. Their duty should be to the fans to put the best team on the ice and serve the fans, because it's the fans that are paying for it. It's the fans that are giving so much of themselves being fans, right? Like, how much of our life do we dedicate to the Canucks? It's kind of ridiculous. Probably way too. I know we've got a friggin' podcast talking about it. Like, it's obscene. Really, it's quite ridiculous how much we give to our love of this team. In my opinion, the owners should feel like they owe the fans.
Completely
to do
agree.
Everything they possibly can to put a good team on the ice, on the field. And so if you're running a profitable franchise, you should put every possible dollar you can back into that team, with that caveat that I still do think that because you put money in, you should still be making a profit running that team.
Completely agree.
But it should be, cap it at, like, I'm never going to take more than $10 million a year from owning this team. Everything else is going back into the team. I think that's just my perspective.
Yeah.
And I know that people don't get rich by being, charitable and giving money back when they could take it themselves. But man, if somebody offered me $1 billion and said I could go buy a sports team, I'd like to think that I would still take that view that I owe the fans. And
I'm with you. My final thought, Bo, Vladdy, please don't go to the Yankees. Please don't go to the Dodgers. Please don't go to the Red Sox. Pretty much anyone else, just don't go to those three. Please don't go to those three.
I'd prefer not the Astros or the Padres probably, but I could live with it.
I like
just not those three.
Just not those three, please. All right. We're going to close the sucker out with a draft. And in the spirit of all that has been in the last 2 weeks with all of the politics and all of the international hockey, there's been a lot
National
of
pride.
lots of national pride. And I've experienced it probably more than I ever have in my whole life. The national pride has come out. I walk along the water here in Victoria, and there is Canadian flags everywhere. Everywhere, on every balcony, on every window, there's Canadian flags hanging from people's car windows. It is everywhere. So I felt appropriate to do a Canadiana draft. All things Canadian. We're going to be creative with it. We're going to be basically just drafting things that you think of as a Canadian, things that make you Canadian, things that are inherently Canadian.
Make you proud.
That's
Absolutely.
right. All right. So the coin flip, kick us off. Who's going first?
Okay. I'll flip the cursed coin that only ever seems to land J-Dawg side up.
Let's keep it going.
Come on.
Let's go.
You know, I honestly don't
Let's
mind
go.
for the draft because it means I get 2 out of my top 3. So fine.
That's true.
You get your top pick. I don't think we're going to have the same top pick anyways.
Probably
so I
not.
think this is once again
We'll
going
see.
to play into my favor.
Okay. So with the first pick in this Canadian draft, I have to go with the 2010 Golden Goal by Sidney Crosby. That is the thing I have been most proud of, probably, about being a Canadian. Something that one of my most fond Canadian memories is that Golden Goal. I was at a tournament in Vanderhoof, British Columbia, playing minor hockey. I played in the third, the bronze medal game in the tournament for the first 2 periods of the gold medal game. And I ran up as fast as I could up into the loft area that was packed full of, I don't know, like at least 100 people watching on this one, like 42-inch TV screen. And we watched the third period in overtime. And when Sidney Crosby scored that goal, the burst of noise in that very tiny room I get chills thinking about it. So my number 1 pick, the Golden Goal 2010, Sidney Crosby.
A pretty good pick. A very specific pick, though. So I'm going to do you one better.
Okay.
I'm going to take something that even manages to get a piece of the Golden Goal, which is hockey, period.
Oh, okay.
Hockey in general.
Well
as
done.
a Canadian institution. So, see, I get the Golden Goal as well.
Dang it. No, I'm pretty sure I get the Golden Goal. You get the rest of hockey. I get the best of hockey.
And you know what? Hey, if I take the Summit Series as well, we're getting all of hockey.
Hey, don't take picks. Don't take picks.
No, that's not a pick. That doesn't count as a pick. No, I am just taking hockey. If you want to get specific and pick another hockey event, that is your prerogative. For my second pick, I'm going to take something that I learned about as a young man, as I believe all Canadians did, who have been born in the last several decades anyways. But I don't think I ever really had an appreciation for it until I was much older and looked back on the story and really kind of contemplated exactly what it meant. And so for the thing that gives me probably even more pride than hockey as a Canadian, with my second pick, I am taking Terry Fox.
Oh, wow. Good pick.
Now, if anybody is going Terry Fox, isn't that thing that I do at school where we run or something? Yeah, it sure is. And if you're like me and you never really understood why his name is on it, do yourself do a favor and just look it up on YouTube. There's a bunch of great 5-minute videos that just kind of explain it, but truly an inspiration, an incredible young man, an incredible story, and something that I think we can all be incredibly proud of.
Very cool.
Second pick, Terry Fox.
So I was at the museum this last Family Day in the Family Day long weekend, and on display in the entry was the Terry Fox van that he used in his journey
support
across
van.
Canada. So it was very neat to see that. Okay. With my second pick, I'm going to take something that is very near and dear to my heart, something I also learned about as a young man, and has stuck with me the whole way. My second pick is Kraft Dinner. I love Kraft Dinner. It is Canadian. It is very tasty. And it has to be Kraft Dinner.
Wow.
With my third pick of the draft, I am going with something that I interacted with prior to Canada's game against the USA this past Thursday. It is something that I heard referenced after the game, after they beat the USA this past Thursday. And that is Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback. It was blaring in the Canadian dressing room after their win. It was in my headphones prior to the win. It is probably my favorite pump up song. Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback is my third choice.
It's fascinating how specific you're getting with things. Like you didn't take hockey, you took the golden goal. You didn't take Nickelback, you took Burn It to the Ground.
That's pretty much all I want to draft out of Nickelback, I think, personally.
Fair enough. And Burn It to the Ground it's a banger. Yeah. Oh man, Nickelback takes a lot of crap. But they've got some good stuff. Like
I agree. I'm with you.
That's fun. Okay. Starting to see how different our lists are going to really be here. Man, I feel like I just want to go off my board and just pick some more random things, but I'm going to stick to it for the most part. And I'm going to say the maple leaf.
Oh, very, very on the nose. Very on the nose.
Little boring, perhaps. Okay. And how about I'm going to go with politeness /sorry.
I like it. Yeah. I think that is probably how we're most internationally known.
I think that it is fading in recent years. I don't think it has quite the same prevalence as it once did.
When you travel,
I think we're maybe a little less polite than we once were, but
people find out you're American in the UK and Europe. They're not generally overly. You get a different response as an American when they find out you're Canadian. I have experienced so much love as a Canadian in Europe and just how nice Canadians are that I think maybe if it's dying down here, I think it's still holding up around the world.
Well, that would be nice. So politeness /sorry. I lumped them together. I think it works.
I think that's fair. Well, so I have got the golden goal with my first pick. I have got Kraft Dinner with my second pick. I have got Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback with my third pick. Now this is that's a pretty good evening, but there's something that's missing. Something that's missing out of that evening. With my fourth pick, I'm going to take Molson Canadian. When you think of Canadian beer, Molson Canadian is, as far as I understand it, Canada's beer. So I'm going to take Molson Canadian with my fourth pick. And
a stroke of genius to lean that hard into the Canadian pride in the marketing, the branding, all of it.
It's true.
Pretty smart.
Now, I have 4 or 5 other options here I can go with, but I just had a thought and I'm going to go off the board with my fifth pick. And I think it probably is the most Canadian thing. and that's Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is Canada. The Double Double is known as the Canadian coffee. It's I had a friend tell me that he was traveling in, I believe it was Dubai, and he came across a Tim Hortons there, and he was very struck that there was a Tim Hortons in, I believe it was Dubai. And apparently a bunch of like rich students went to Canada, went to UBC for schooling, got hooked on Tim Hortons, came back and were like, we want to keep having this. So they opened up a Tim Hortons franchise in, I believe it was Dubai. So I'm going to go with Tim Hortons.
Another interesting pick. I think as much as politeness and sorry I worry about falling off, I think Tim Hortons maybe takes the crown on that one. I think they got bought out by a foreign company.
I believe they did, yeah.
Majority owned.
Yeah.
I think quality's going downhill. The service is going downhill. I could do a whole rant on Tim Hortons, but the point is well taken that I think it is still very much in the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah. I mean,
when it comes to Canada.
What was the logo on the Canadian players' helmets for Four Nations? It was Tim Hortons. They were the sponsor.
Tim Hortons. Man, as you've been doing yours, I've been trying to I don't know, go off the board. Having more fun with one. My board was very, very straightforward. Oh man. I think I am going to, it's not even on my board, but I think I'm just going to say snow.
Oh.
I know down in Victoria, probably not as much.
We had it for 2 weeks.
Situation for you. I'm a little further north in BC. I know J-Dawg recently was as well. Snow very much a part of our life up here for a significant portion of the year. And I think in general, when people imagine Canada,
it's true.
There's probably a good chance that there's an awful lot of snow in that mental image.
It's true.
Well.
It's true.
So as much as I hate it and dread when it's coming and hate dealing with it when it's here, I'm going to say snow as a Canadian.
Good pick. Good pick.
Idea.
I like it. And you have one more pick, I believe?
Nope.
That's it. Okay. So what are your picks again?
So my picks, I have hockey in general. I have Terry Fox, the Maple Leaf, politeness/sorry, and snow.
I mean, it's a pretty good lineup. It's very Canadian.
Very Canadian.
But mine will win for sure.
You want to recap yours, or do you want me to?
I have got the Sidney Crosby golden goal in 2010. I have got Kraft Dinner, Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback, Molson Canadian, and Tim Hortons. I am pretty damn happy with that lineup.
Fair enough.
Do
you want to do a few honorable?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll rapid fire the rest of my list that didn't make the cut, and you'll see that I went very like Jasper gift shop. It's the best way I can describe my picks here. Beavers, Moose,
Moose. I also had
Mounties.
Yes,
Canadian. Maple syrup.
I also had that one. Yeah.
Bacon. Although I will push back against anybody who tries to push maple bacon. That's an abomination. And the last was the goose, which a coworker of mine, Tom, described to me just yesterday as a cobra chicken. I'm like,
what?
Cobra chicken?
Cobra chicken?
And he's like, yeah, because like a cobra, they'll like pull their head back and then strike at you when they bite. And I'm like, cobra chicken. I love it. The cobra chicken, my last honorable mention.
I like it. I had ketchup chips, very nearly drafted. The maple syrup, the moose, 72 Summit Series win, as you previously mentioned. Poutine has to definitely be mentioned. I had it for dinner last night. It was very good. And the Jays and Raptors are both like Canada's teams in their sports. So
Absolutely.
very good. Greatly enjoyed this. Do you have any final notes or anything to say before we wrap up here?
No, we cut a little bit of content, tried to keep the episode a little bit shorter. We went a little long with our week in review, but I mean, the Four Nations, it's a pretty significant event in the hockey world, so we thought it deserved a little extra attention. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, well, if you liked it, please hit like, hit subscribe, tell friends and family. We're always trying to just, grow and have fun with this thing. So, thank you for listening and excited for
Please
lots
leave
more
a comment in the
yes,
in the
please
comment
leave a
section
comment
down below. I am desperate for feedback that I am in fact dominating J-Dawg in these drafts. I feel it. I could just use a little reassurance,
especially after that one.
So leave some comments if there's things you want to see. Any questions you want to ask, we're happy to address viewer questions. Happy to hear from you in any way.
All right. See you all next time. Peace.
Peace.